You brought up Jack Dorsey. He's
Mhm.
been a big player in this push towards Web 5. And when we had our intro call, you showed me, I don't know if it's his website or someone
It
else's
is his
website,
website. Yeah.
that showed a percentage of completion in these different areas that we are
hmm
in moving toward Web 5. Could you speak about that?
Absolutely. So Web 5 is 85% complete. And what that means is that the protocols that make up this new internet built on Bitcoin, they are almost done. They've completed two of the protocols, and the rest are getting their finishing touches. And I'd love to walk through each one of those. The first one would be DIDs. Obviously, I'm wearing a mask right now, a helmet,
Yeah.
right? And it's to protect my identity. When I go to the Bitcoin conference, I like to go as a normal guy. I'm not looking for fame. So I don't wear the helmet. People don't recognize me. When I go on shows or, interviews, I wear the helmet because it actually protects my privacy and my security as a Bitcoiner. As we all know, if you hold Bitcoin on long enough of a timeline, you're going to be targeted in some fashion, whether it's with a hacker or some other type of threat. And I believe it's very important for everyone to be able to take their privacy into their own hands.
Mm.
And that's what decentralized identifiers allow you to do. Decentralized identifiers allow you to create an online identity that is not tied to anything in your real life identity.
Mm.
So rather than a fingerprint or some form of ID card, you can create self-sovereign identities, SSIs, and you are able to move through the internet building reputation with these decentralized identities. And it allows you the freedom to truly express yourself and be who you are, because you can also have multiple decentralized identities. You can
Mm.
have your church identity, your work identity. That's very important for me. You can have the identity that you use for when you buy things online. You can have the identity for when you go to public events. This would allow us to really take control of our identity in a way that we don't have that today. With facial recognition, with all of the ways that we're tracked, we don't have control over what people can see or our self-expression.
Mm. Okay, so Bitcoin's already significantly disruptive to the state, and that it, well, over the long run, takes away the money printer, right, as a revenue option. Also gives people this kind of hyper portable, hyper concealable form of purchasing power or money, which is obviously good for the individual and their contentions with the state. But now you're describing something, another thing that I haven't thought too much about, identification, which is
Yeah,
something the state obviously administers for a lot of people. But you're saying that can now be done in a non-state technological way, a decentralized way, effectively.
that's
What are the
right.
implications of that?
Yeah, so they're big, obviously, right? What Bitcoin did for our money, I believe Web5 will do the same for our data and our identity.
Hmm.
And it's necessary because the world that we're in today is not the same world that we were in 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It used to be that your social security number was pretty much safe unless you did something stupid,
Mhm.
right? Just today, I saw a news headline where every social security number has now been leaked online
Mm.
of every American,
Mm.
billions of social security numbers. So the system itself that the state is using is failing, and they're looking for a solution. Their solution is going to be the central bank digital currency.
Mhm.
The Bitcoiner solution is going to be Web5. And
Mm.
if Bitcoin can't compete with the central bank digital currency, then they already won.
Mm. Wow. So the fork in the road is here, and one fork leads towards central bank digital currency plus social credit scoring system.
That's right.
The other fork is decentralized identifiers and Bitcoin, basically.
Yeah.
So,
And on top of that, we're very privileged
uh
here in America, right? I can go down to the bank and I can show an ID card and get a bank account, and we have all kinds of privileges. Around the world, people don't have the same privileges. And it's even harder for them to get an identity or an ID because it has to be given by either a banking institution, or it needs to be validated by a government entity. So the ability to create your own identity and build verifiable reputation on that identity, that is something that will change the world, because there are so many people that are not in the equation currently because they can't prove where they live. They don't have all the privileges, as I said, that we have living in an industrialized society.
It starts to make my head spin a little bit, because you won't even have your one ID that you use for everything. Like you said, you'll have multiple. So then does that almost call into question the idea of identity itself? Like, will you even have?
Yeah, I mean,
I guess we'll still have first names, right? So have first names, last names, presumably. But
whatever you want to identify as, and that's actually a pretty in vogue concept right now. People like dead names. They like to identify in different ways. I say, sure, you can identify however you want, and that is the beauty of what Jack is building with the DIDs.
And the anonymity is obviously off the charts, right? Because you can just spin up a new identity for any activity that you're looking to engage in.
However, it would be extremely difficult to build reputation that would be bankable or...
So reputation starts to become more at a premium.
That's right. Yep. Attending an event and having other people being able to verify that you were there, huge. That's a big deal. The scammer most likely is not going to have access to that.
Right.
They're going to either be trying to buy other people's DIDs, which would be difficult because all of this is, again, taking place on the Bitcoin node. Why would you give your Bitcoin node to anybody else? Right? So every system has its weak points. However, this solves a lot more problems than it creates. And we may still have some of the issues in this system that we have in our current system, but at least we'll have, as you said, more anonymity, more privacy. I would like to make the distinction for the audience and whoever's listening that anonymity is people knowing what you're doing, but not who you are. And privacy is people knowing who you are, but not what you're doing. And there are times where you want privacy and there are times where you want anonymity. And the truth is that almost nothing is private today, right? I mean, everything is tracked, traced. I am just leaking data points every single day. And there's a dust cloud of data points around me. So this doesn't make it any harder for the state to catch the bad guys doing bad things. They already have all the data. This protects us from the bad guys.
Wow. Super interesting. So you said that Web 5 is 85% complete per Jack Dorsey's website.
Yep.
But then when I'm looking at, I assume obviously Web 4 is a prerequisite to Web 5 because you needed the decentralized internet provisioning or the mesh networks prior to Web 5 being functional. I don't see mesh networks very prevalent in the world today. I don't see them anywhere, frankly. So could you, is that the 15% that's missing, or like what's going on with mesh networks?
Well, to be clear, Jack Dorsey has a different definition of Web 5 than we do. There is a little bit of a difference there, and there's actually a difference all over the world. If you go to the Asian countries, their concept of Web 5 is very much an internet that can't go down. If you come here to America, you're going to hear people talk about Web 5, and it has some American ideals baked into it of being able to own your property. And so the truth is that there is not a commonly accepted definition across the board. Jack Dorsey doesn't recognize Web 4 as even being part of the equation. We do. They would say that Web 5 is Web 2 plus Web 3.
Okay.
And we don't disagree with that, but we do believe that there is more decentralization that needs to take place, and there is a place for Web 4 there once we have enough Bitcoin nodes out and about. That's really, you'll understand this because of the phrase gradually, then suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we believe that Web 5 is going to stay underground, it's going to be uncommon, and then suddenly it's going to be everywhere.
Mm.
And in the last 2 years, I've seen that. I've been talking to people about Web 5 since late 2022. And Jack Dorsey did announce in 2022 at South by Southwest the concept of Web 5. And so not very many people, including myself, paid attention. Just like Bitcoin, for the first couple years, couple months, I didn't really pay much attention to it. Everyone comes to Bitcoin as a skeptic. Everyone comes to Web 5 as a skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
However, what it can do is so profound. And in the last year, we've seen examples of where it would have been really nice to have an internet that can't go down,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've seen AT&T go down. We saw the CrowdStrike incident, many cyber attacks, ransomware attacks all over the world. And with AI, it's only going to get worse. So in my opinion, Web 5 is inevitable simply because we are evolving, and the internet also needs to evolve with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the theme here with a lot of these network technologies is you want something that's very robust or anti-fragile,
Right.
and then something that is highly usable and accessible, right? So it won't go down. You can always get to it, and it always works.
Yep.
That's one of the amazing things about Bitcoin is like it is that for money, but
Right.
we also need that. Bitcoin depends on the internet, so we would also need an internet that's equally robust in that way. I'm surprised Jack Dorsey is not advocating for the decentralized provisioning of internet. It seems like that's something that's somewhat obvious to this vision.
The amazing thing is with the protocols that Jack is creating, we would be able to utilize those protocols to build this mesh network internet that I'm speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're doing so much work currently with the identity that it's okay if we take on the reins for the mesh networks. That's really our heart, is we want to see an internet that can't go down, because right now people are surviving off the internet. If the internet went down, goodbye medications, goodbye paying your electric bill, goodbye figuring out where to get food. I mean, really, the entire society has become accustomed to relying on these third-party connections and to live. I mean, we pay all of our bills, at least I do, through the internet. So it is something that's important, but it couldn't happen without the protocols for Web 5. And one of the protocols I'd like to highlight is the verifiable credentials. This is something I'm very excited about personally. Imagine you have a wallet on your device and it's holding identity records, it's holding your DID. It can also hold something called a verifiable credential. And to give you a real life use case, when you go to the store, if you want to buy a case of beer, you have to hand over an identity card that has your name, your middle name, your date of birth, your weight, your address, a picture of what you look like, your eye color. I mean, you're giving that person everything they need to stalk you, right? Imagine if you could go to the counter and simply show them your age and it's verifiable. They don't need to see everything else. Almost like a zero knowledge proof for your identity. Let's take another example with the verifiable credentials. My organization hires somebody and we create a verifiable credential that is attached to their decentralized identity. And now they can verify to a bank that they have employment. And if they need to, they can show that bank how much they're being paid. And because the verifiable credential can be changed by the issuer, if they're no longer an employee, we can revoke that verifiable credential. So now you have the ability for plane tickets, for titles, house titles, car titles, all kinds of verification metrics that are needed for society to function. And it can be self-owned and secure.
Does that still ground out in state-issued titles and age verifications, though? Because there has to be some arbiter of that truth, right? At bottom.
Absolutely. And that's where your data comes in. One thing that you can't escape is your digital footprint. And if the government can give credence to your digital footprint, then why wouldn't everyone accept it everywhere? And so that is one of the challenges, is to get the states, the governments, the banks, all the organizations to trust these verifiable credentials and decentralized identifiers. But if you have all of the data to support it, it becomes more verifiable than the ID card that I can buy off the internet and open a bank account.
Interesting. So then we have Bitcoin, the money, and then Bitcoin, the network.
Yep.
And they now kind of functioning as two different things in this world. You gave me an analogy about a city on our call. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. So with these mesh networks, with this new internet, no one can be censored. Today, right now, we have really no free speech on the internet. Every account that we have is owned by a third party, and that third party can censor us or remove what we say at no cost to them, based on a whim, without any due process. With Web 4, because it's a mesh network of Bitcoin nodes, if someone stopped receiving traffic, let's say they had a power outage, that's okay. You can still get traffic through different nodes to your destination. Kind of like a city. If one road is closed, there's still another way to get there. They would have to close many roads to prevent your speech from being able to go out into the new web. And that's what we're hoping to build, is a internet that cannot be censored, that cannot go down.
So those analogies about Bitcoin being a city in cyberspace are not just analogies.
Oh no, it's all happening for real. The things that we heard early on, I got in 2016 and started learning about Bitcoin, and all of the ideas about citadels and what the future of Bitcoin could look like, I believe that really will take place.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.